we're going to transition into who are the kinds of buyers. So Dave, you want to address this? So
Okay.
getting to Susan's question.
So, starting with finding the buyers, finding qualified people. Strategic, I'm going to run through this pretty quickly, then I want you guys to ask me questions. Strategic buyers. These are buyers who will take additional value from this. Let me give you an example in the healthcare field. I have one client who has 26 clinics, and those clinics are physical therapy clinics, and there is a hospital that is sitting and talking with them because they see with whether Obamacare does get knocked down by the Supreme Court or not, there are going to be some shifts. They need a funnel for patients. And here is a business that can be a ready funnel because they have a hard time marketing in other ways. So a strategic buyer in this case is a hospital that thinks that they can get multiples of value out of this. Because once those physical therapy patients are in their system, they will get other services from this hospital and from the physicians and others. All right, financial buyers. These are purely people who are, this is not about a lifestyle, this is about a business transaction. You will find small equity funds, private equity, investment banking. Probably heard all those terms. In essence, there are specific sizes of companies. Generally, 10 million is the smallest, but they're looking for how can we buy a company and with whatever smarts or connections we have, place our own people in there and sell that business later on, usually in 1 to 5 years, for considerable multiples. They do not have emotions about the business the way you do. Emotional buyers, your partners, you are all, you probably love what you're doing. Engineering, whether it's fixing people's houses or the businesses that you go into. An emotional buyer is somebody who just loves sweets, who loves financial planning. And that's why they're going into this. Those kinds of people, in terms of, and we'll get to qualifying it, those kinds of people are doing it because of a love for something. Finally, family members. Is there anyone here who has plans to either sell or transfer to family members? Okay, so one of the questions around family members that I would start with, this is getting now to qualifying, is do they have the skills and the predisposition, the hard wiring to want to run a company? I work with a $100 million company right now in which they're doing a generation skipping plan because the son does not want to run the business. The grandchildren are 20 and going through engineering school right now. So finding qualified buyers out of family members, and we're not going to solve all your issues today, but for family members, it's do they have the training, do they have the disposition, and I will add one other that usually doesn't get raised, do they have the experience? One company in town, nine outlets, they have taken their 2 children, 2 different couples, and sent them off and said, go work somewhere else. You cannot work here for the next 3 years. One of them came back, one of them didn't. One of them's in LA working for a shipping company. The one who came back is now in marketing and sales, having worked for 2 other organizations in that 3-year period and gotten a great deal of experience that's applicable. That's the qualifier, because frankly with family members, it's not usually about them coming up with money. You're going to have to figure out how they can buy that company from you. We don't have the time today to deal with that. All right, emotional buyers. In terms of qualifying those buyers and finding people who have the money for these two. This one, again, they come with their own money. You need to do it over time. You need to have specific and clear standards. So in your case, I'd want to know how much money you want, and I'd want to know one other thing: what kind of terms you're willing to deal with. Once you have those two things, then you can decide when someone comes along and they say, I have $5 million that I will buy your company with, and you really wanted 6, and you say to them, okay, you choose the price, I'm going to deal with the terms. Here are the terms. If you want it at 5 million, you're going to have to pay me an annuity for a certain amount of time, that kind of stuff. All right, now how do you qualify those people? How do you find a way to get their ability to buy? You ask. It is no more complex than that. Ryan, any suggestions on that one?
Just having a real conversation with them.
Okay, Dave, how about yourself?
Sit down and talk.
Okay. When buyers come, my feeling about it is don't waste a lot of time. Ask them right away. I need to have your financial statements and a way to verify that financial information. If you don't have it, we're not going to do a deal. I was helping somebody buy a business in the Bahamas a year and a half ago. The company couldn't come up with financial statements. I said, walk away. He spent another 9 months following that one. I read last month about that company going through bankruptcy. It's the same on the other side. Make sure that you ask. All right, how else do you find and qualify those people? With strategic buyers, you already know who they are. In your case, they may be young physicians, or they might be a large physician group, or they may be a hospital. You need to figure it out. I'll give you an example. One of my clients right now did a true merger. $15 million company merged with a $20 million company that's out of town, and their goal is to sell at $100 million in 5 years, and they are in the process of making acquisitions. They have, in the last 2 years, acquired 7 small companies along the West Coast in their industry. They know that there are 4 companies right now, much larger than them, on the East Coast who do not have a West Coast presence. And the cost of developing or getting that West Coast presence is huge, the amount of investment to build it. So they're going to offer to all 4 of these larger companies in 5 years a fully integrated company that is going to give them a West Coast presence. That's a strategic buyer. They've qualified those 4 not only by their balance sheets, because they are public companies, so there's information you can gather from those. If they are not public companies, there's lots of ways to do it, and some of it on the cheap. For example, I imagine Dave, Earl, and Ryan all have ways of getting financial information about even private companies. The way I would go about it, the library. They have databases you can get to. You can pull a lot of information for free about those companies. Sometimes it's not fully accurate, but it's usually good enough to start. So you probably, and this is why the soul searching is important, need to get clear about who and what type of buyer you're going to want in these areas. We don't have time to go into lots of detail with you. I can stay afterwards if you want to chat more about that. Valuation. I know Ryan, but Dave, pipe in as well, Earl. Ryan, you do valuations for businesses, and you do them without charge. So figuring out what the value is, the baseline, you can give that to somebody in, what, a couple of weeks?
5 days.
We'll cover that in a couple minutes too.
All right, yeah, and I don't mean to get ahead, and See what I mean about my handwriting?
Yeah.
Okay, buyers, what was your last one?
Contracts.
Contracts. That's your section. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this real quick before we kick off the second exercise. The second exercise helps us to think through which of these is the most appropriate for us. And I want you to really think more broadly than what you normally would think. You know, most of us have a small circle of folks that we would put in the pool of, here are people who would likely buy our business. But as Dave mentioned, it may be a competitor that's far-flung who's looking for a particular presence in Seattle, or you happen to have a customer base that they want access to. So think about the bigger reasons why people might be looking at your business and who those potential buyers are. When we look at the second exercise, I wanted to kind of introduce this to you all. So this is page 2 of the handout you all have. When we list the potential buyers and their strengths and weaknesses, and this is really particular to your business and your situation. You know, there are a lot of folks out there that have grown their business organically, built it up, and they're not interested in selling it to HP, or they're not interested in selling it to ginormous international, multinational company. They're looking for someone who is more a financial buyer locally, or a family member, or someone who's an emotional buyer who will keep some of that vision and character. And there's nothing wrong with one or the other. It's a question of what is most important to you. So don't dismiss one of those simply because it doesn't fit what you want, but put that into the strengths and weaknesses on why a particular party may not be the right one for your business. Because that's how we want to think about this. You may find that, you know, well, they're the only one that's financially stable to make this purchase, even though it might lose its character, it may be my only option. So we want to weigh out those strengths and weaknesses of each of the parties as part of this thinking before discounting any particular player. The other thing I wanted to mention was when Dave was talking about strategic buyers and financial buyers and picking up the phone and calling them. I mean, for a lot of folks, that doesn't even seem practical. You know, who would you call at HP to say, hey, I'm interested in selling you my business, right? But from a practical standpoint, if you're looking at selling your business and you've got this plan in place, what you're able to do then is to figure out what kinds of third-party intermediaries might support you. We all probably know business brokers in the area. And different business brokers have different niches as far as size of companies they deal with, industries they deal with. And if you're looking to sell to a very large company or a private equity firm that would be building it up and flipping it, for lack of a better word, maybe you need an investment banker. So understanding who those intermediaries are is a part of this communication. It's not going to be you're going to pick up the phone and call, you know, this giant company and try to find your way through their maze of people to sell your business. That's not going to give you the best leverage or the best price. So don't discount this because you don't know how to do it, but think very broadly about your industry and about your business and who are the likely players that could step in. I'm working with a company right now that's 2 minority shareholders, and the majority shareholders are in their 80s, and they're selling their business to their nephew. But both parties have business brokers. And so even though they're family, it still is kind of an arm's length transaction between the two, trying to figure out how do we structure this so that it's fair and makes sense for both parties. And when you look at the age of the majority owners, you know, what is their runway for how much money they need and how quickly they need to get it to make real use of it? So their estate planning is kind of a big part of that process as well. So if they're getting $6 million for the business, where are we going to put that to be a logical thing for their estate as well? So again, take 5 minutes to think through this. Again, think broadly. Don't discount people because it doesn't seem like it's logical, but really kind of go through the full process. And then we'll loop back and get some information.
By the way, in a 5-year, and I think of this as a minimum of 5-year process, you don't walk out of a 90-minute workshop with a full-blown plan. So today we're giving you initial steps. The most important thing you can do, I believe, is just what Michelle said. Have a list of questions. Don't settle on assumptions. Okay.